phone number that was provided on the city website, and that's how they'll be making public comment. They can see us, but we won't be able to see them, but we'll be able to hear them and converse with them. Okay. Teresa, there you are. Hello. Okay, so it looks like the board is all here. I think I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Tonight we have two public hearings, 60 South Front Street and 620 Union Street. If I have a motion to open the public hearing, I'd like to start with 60 South Front Street, please. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Thank you, Laura. Second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Okay, Ben and team, where are you?
We're here.
Okay, great.
We're together in spirit here with you. We are very excited to come back and put forth our plan again to the board. I'm here with Kelly Crimmins, who is our operations manager, and Rachel, who's our consultant, and Ted, who is our brilliant architect. We've all done our best to try and answer the questions that came up in the last planning board meeting, and are here to answer more. This is a big project. It's a real labor of love. It's definitely a team effort. So we're just very excited about it and hope you like what we've come up with. Again, I'm going to ask Rachel to take it away, if you don't mind.
Hi guys, it's nice to be with everyone on the board again, and to the public who are listening in, thank you for joining us. I'm going to share my screen so I can walk everyone through just some more details about what our plans for 60 South Front are. So give me just one moment. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can, Rachel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to echo what Ben said, we are super excited to continue to present everything that we've been working on for the space at South Front, and just to kind of reorient ourselves. This is the large red pole barn building right across from the Hudson Amtrak. And we are proposing to transform that space into a new area for gathering and community building and creative thinking. So see how I change my, there it goes. So that space that you can see in the photo behind this little table of contents is what it's currently at, and we are going to render it to include a market, restaurant, maker studio, gathering space, and culinary garden in the now empty lot behind the building. So today we'll just go through how this plan speaks to the riverfront revitalization, a little bit about Kitty's Market and Restaurant, which you all have already seen and approved. The barn is what we're really going to focus on today. Some of our acoustic and lighting plans for the building and ways that it's going to engage with the community, job opportunities that are resulting from this project, a little bit about what we're all experiencing with COVID-19, and just a summary to kind of keep us all in. So in regards to the riverfront revitalization, this project really just hones in on some of the key goals of the DRI initiatives. It's going to really play into drawing people to the waterfront space for public use and enjoyment. There are new living wage jobs and workforce development that will result from the continued progress in this project. The market will provide access to fresh food in that neighborhood, and it's just a mixed use project that promotes walkability in that area of Hudson. So this is just an overview of what we're talking about with the site. You can see the Hudson Amtrak up on the top left corner, and then the site itself, which we have two just squares kind of outlining these two areas, which center on some of the adjustments we are making to the site. So in the smaller one, there's the wine shop and the maker studio, and we'll be adding sidewalk to a space that currently is just sort of like continued asphalt, and it's a little bit unclear where the road ends, and it seems like it is a little bit of a dangerous pedestrian walkway as it interrupts these two existing sidewalks. And then we're looking at the event space, which is down on the bottom left here, and an additional curb cut with handicap parking in that same area that you can see where my mouse is. So the market and restaurant, just to really, kind of touch on what is happening there. It's already been approved by the board, but it's offering fresh produce, grab and go options, and provisions of all sorts. The restaurant will offer composed sit down service and be in that same building. So that's the building you see here on the left, and this continued progress with the project will incorporate the large barn space. The garden in the back that we're proposing building will be accessible from that central gate, as well as the central corridor in the barn. It'll be mostly edible plants for the restaurant, really focusing on culinary education and understory native planting, with some casual seating interspersed. And now for the heart of it, the barn. So transforming this barn space to include a wine shop and some flexible retail space, as well as a small gathering space. So really reinvigorating what that building is for the neighborhood and the area. This just sort of shows the breakdown of where everything is in the space. So we have the market and restaurant on the left, the wine shop, maker studio, and the event space with this big open corridor that continues right into the back garden. So that garden is really, as I mentioned, focusing on culinary plantings, agricultural education, and just areas for people to kind of sit and hang and experience the space, a little bit of nature down in that industrial zone. This rendering shows the front of the building as we're proposing it. So there's that continued sidewalk which connects the existing sidewalks and just makes it a little bit more clear, safer for pedestrian throughway in that space. And then this entrance is just wide open, so stairs for people to carry right into that back garden, as well as a handicap lift on the side, which I'll show more in another rendering. We also have just a little render of what the interior of the event space can look like. So you can see it's a pretty cozy space, but we're opening up the side with options for these big glass doors to open and have this very indoor-outdoor light feeling, focusing on, corporate gatherings and some community building in that space. These are the elevations. So we have the front here and the rear elevation. And then this is just a little bit more detail, since questions came up about this in our last meeting, but showing what the existing sort of parking and asphalt interruption to the sidewalk looks like, and then the proposed new continued sidewalk, not extending into the roadway, but just connecting the existing sidewalks and changing that to make it a little more pedestrian friendly. As far as acoustics and lighting goes, we really want this space to be something that integrates with the neighborhood, that feels like a real asset in addition to what is happening in that space. We want to be mindful of the Hudson City Code 210-6D. So after 10 p.m., all ambient noise is below 55 decibels. I'm really just wanting to be good neighbors and to have our neighbors really enjoy what we're putting together. The back lot will be transformed into that garden space, and part of the plan for the plantings in the back there will be some planted mounds, culinary beds, and then tree lines, as well as these hedgerows, which act as a real sonic barrier. Just when you have the larger trees and the hedgerows, they help to baffle any sound that might bleed over from what's happening in the space. And this is just to give you a sense of some of the examples of trees we're talking about planting in that garden at the perimeter. In addition to those planted barriers, the glass that will open up from the barn to the backyard is going to be triple glazed glass. So that's just a really amazing acoustic barrier. It's 3 glass pieces that really make it so that if those doors are closed and things are happening inside, no one should hear what's happening outside. And this just gives a little more info, kind of a diagram showing you what that glass looks like, and also just touching on some of the passive house design features that we're building into the renovation for that structure. The lighting plan for this space is really subtle, so we're planning on using gentle step lights, some goosenecks, path lights, and accent lights. We want it to feel like it just kind of glows and highlight some of the trees, but it shouldn't be anything that's super bright. We're not planning on floodlights or neons or strobes or anything obtrusive like that. We also will have a dedicated contact person who will be in charge of communicating with any city agencies, and they'll be on site at all times if there's an event in the space, so that there's always a point of contact if any questions come up. With regards to how we're thinking about this space, we really want to enlist programming that highlights the innovation and creativity of Hudson as well as New York at large. And we want this space to really service not just visitors who are coming up to use it for events or to visit on the weekends, but the people who live and work in Hudson, and being mindful of the impact that a space like this will have on the neighborhood and traffic flow. Some examples of programming that we're talking about for this space will include a plant sale and floral workshop with Floral Design Studio and Farm Saipua, design marketplace tying into what's happening in the makerspace, things like a natural fermentation showcase, ongoing community culinary skill shares, and corporate meetings. So making sure that space is really technologically up to date so that it services that sector. Most guests we imagine will arrive on foot from staying places in the area, some of the hotels locally or Airbnbs, as well as coming up on the train. We don't anticipate that there will be a ton of car traffic for what's going on in at the site. But that said, we do know that there is a lot just down the road that has 228 parking spaces. So should really well cover any car traffic that is happening for the space. And then I think Betsy mentioned last meeting that there is also some street parking on Front Street that could potentially service the space. Jobs are really central to what we are doing. With this, we'll need a good amount of people that will be part of the whole organization. So with all the businesses that are happening and across them, we imagine that there will be upwards of 50 new jobs created. In addition to job creation, there are also training opportunities that exist as a part of what those jobs are, and just contributing to the commercial regeneration in the area. And commercial regeneration feels particularly poignant at this moment in time, just given what's going on in the world. And we just want to acknowledge that we're all sort of in uncharted territory with the way that COVID-19 is affecting community here, as well as the world at large. In our plans for how we move forward with this space, we want to make sure that the health and safety of the neighbors and people who are working in the space is really at the forefront as everyone comes back online. So we'll be flexible and amenable to how things are feeling. And just in summary for what we're doing down there, we want to make sure that we're centering the Hudson waterfront revitalization and pedestrian accessibility. There are culinary and understory planting gardens that are transforming what is now an empty lot behind the space. Dynamic retail and gathering space will kind of enliven what the building actually is doing. There's been careful noise consideration and lighting consideration in the way we're making our plans, and there are numerous new jobs and training that will be created as a result of this project. More than anything, when we talk about this space together, we're excited to just be together again in a space. We want to host everyone. We're excited to cook for you and to learn and grow with you in a flexible space that's designed specifically with this in mind. So thank you everyone for giving us some time and considering what we're doing here. We're happy to answer any questions and hope that, you know, we can help everyone be as excited about this as we are.
Thanks, Rachel. That was terrific. I appreciate it. Does anyone else from your team want to speak before we open things up a little bit? Ben?
I'm the architect, so I'm available to answer questions, but I think Rachel pretty much covered everything that was planned. So
Thanks, Ted. Let me ask one question of Shaheem, please. Shaheem, when people are entering the waiting room for this meeting, these are people that are wanting to make public comment. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, thanks very much. I did have one quick question. I think you all have done incredible work on this, and I'm very excited about the project. I wanted to comment to the board that we've received 3 letters of support for this project from Basilica Hudson, William Farmer and Son, and Jasana Britton. And we did receive this week 1 letter of concern from a neighbor, Susan Simon, who is quite concerned about noise in the evenings and particularly in the more public spaces, the gathering spaces, and sort of flowing out into the garden. So I will actually send that letter of concern to you, Ben. Is that the proper?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will send that along to you. I think she's most concerned about evening and being able to enjoy her outdoor garden in the evenings and not having to compete with noise from the Red Barn. So,
Sure.
For the barn. So I will send that along to you, and perhaps you can speak with Susan about that.
Love to. That'd be great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Board, do you have any questions for anybody on this team before we open it up to public comment?
I don't have any questions necessarily. This is John Cody. I live on Lower Allen Street as well as Susan. One thing that we've always, well, we haven't discovered, but one thing we always know, the hillside on Allen Street is like an amphitheater. The noise travels up. And I think I don't necessarily echo Susan's concerns, but I would also like to know what the mitigation would be for any outdoor activities that might be there. I can tell you from my own experience when the workmen were down in the yard in the back, I mean, I could very clearly hear individual conversations. So, you know, it could be a concern for others in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we are definitely sensitive to those concerns for sure, and thank you for bringing them up.
Sure.
A lot of what we're talking about with the exterior is about making sure that you don't have to hear individual conversations. So right now, being that it is a completely empty space, with just the hillside there, it really will amplify an echo sound. But as we introduce the larger mature growth trees and these planted mounds and really break up the space, that does a lot for the acoustics of that kind of area, and I imagine will help tremendously. And then with regards to the barn space itself, the things that we were talking about in terms of the triple glazed glass and the passive house design will really effectively encapsulate noise in that building itself. So once people move indoors, there really shouldn't be any of sound bleeding over.
Your plan is for those doors to be open, which is beautiful, so that people can go in and out. So that's not going to really help. That, I mean, just, but I appreciate what you're doing. I going back to what you, the application indicates and what you just said in your presentation, that at 10 p.m. You'll, make sure that the sound is down to the 55 decibels that it's supposed to be. That makes me wonder, if you have an event, do you have an end time for events? I mean, in other words, you'll make sure at 10 that the sound is no more than 55. But how late might an event go?
I mean, it's different for every client that's hosting events with us. With focusing on corporate business, many of our events will not be going later into the evening, and then after about 9:40, we would have people who were still hanging out outside transition to the indoors and make use of those big triple planed glass and close those doors, so that if they were continuing to stay with us, they would all be inside. So channeling the noise in a very different way.
Well, I worked down there in that area on Cross Street, and so I know what John's talking about. The sound that would come from, in this case, the Basilica, up to our building, if it was loud music, for example, right, or a big crowd. It was, we're a theater, so our, we weren't working outside, so we could put up with it. Or we just pretended, that even though we're in Arizona in the desert, we're really at a rock concert. But our audience pretended that. But it's bad. And I guess I wonder, I'm sure just logically, when I think of trees, tall trees helping to mitigate sound, it logically makes sense. But I wonder, have you consulted with, an acoustics specialist and, to find ways to verify that tall trees will help mitigate the sound, or is this something that you think would happen?
So we're working specifically with a landscape architect who has experience in this regard, and is making these pointed recommendations based on the concerns that we've brought to her from the board and the ways that we are thinking about the space and want for it to function within the community, within the neighborhood. We don't want to create a space that's just constantly pissing people off. So we really, it's a big priority for us to design it in a way that allows for people to enjoy the outdoor space while also making sure that the sound is mitigated. And so it really does, it breaks it up from everything that she's told us and the things that I've experienced managing venues for over 10 years. Sound is a long-standing concern, and it's a regular issue. And I know that large plantings have always really, really changed the game.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other board members wish to speak before I open this to the public?
I ask one question, Betsy?
Sure, Stephen.
Thank you for the presentation. I think imagining a time after COVID, I just know that when trains arrive in the evening, it's kind of the most chaotic time right down in that area, particularly just thinking about pedestrian safety. So I guess I'm just curious how you all are thinking about that in terms of arrivals for a large event coinciding with trains arriving.
Totally.
Yeah, how can we mitigate the risk?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that was brought up at the last planning board meeting, and definitely something that's been on our mind as we obviously, from a selfish perspective for our guests who are coming to the space, wouldn't want it to just be a total cluster. So a couple of things with the design of the building that Ted's worked on really beautifully is that additional sidewalk and the front space, and changing the location of where the ADA parking is allows for this sort of like open cushion in front of the building, so that as people arrive, there's like they're not just running up against a building or in parking. There's actually space for people to kind of like figure out and get their bearings without contributing to a traffic issue. And then the entrance to the event space itself is that big, large, open corridor that kind of bisects the building. And so it's really considering that a bottleneck would really not do anybody any favors. And so it moves people directly into either the back garden or into the interior space. All of the like passageways are very clear and like very accommodating for large groups.
That's great. Yeah, and you know, this might even be more a question, Betsy, for you or others with more experience on the board. But I keep on feeling like these projects are opportunities to apply the complete streets kind of thinking to new projects, which I know goes kind of beyond the scope of the application itself and requires some sort of coordination with the city. But I just wanted to note that I think this could be another opportunity to think about creating a safer kind of zone there in front of the train station, especially just thinking about increased traffic with these two very cool businesses opening up.
One thing that I found interesting about the plan, Steve, is what I think Rachel just pointed out, and that is that there is this very forgiving, I suppose it's going to be a gravel type space between the new sidewalk and the actual building. So people aren't going to be squished up against a storefront, or you know, there's actually space to move in there, which I noticed when they first presented the plan. I actually liked that very much, that there is room to gather without being near the street, being on the east side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, well, I guess what I'm imagining is you know, the way the cabs line up there, you know, folks arriving on the train, and just how you know, this kind of extends into the street. This is a question I have, is like, how do we look at these opportunities when new projects are coming up to apply a kind of, you know, some of these things about painting the road or other things like that that can help just significantly increase safety for people, because even without this new kind of business operation happening there, it can be so crazy out there when a train arrives.
Especially on a Friday.
I
had a question.
Or Sunday.
Do we have any accommodation for bicycles, any bike racks or anything that we're doing to facilitate cycling or bicycle sharing or anything like that?
We don't currently, we do actually have some space that would be available to the south there. So I think we could look into that. I think that's definitely a good idea. There is, like we were talking before, like a lot of space along this sidewalk here, which is a landscape and right now kind of a cushion space. So I could see, you know, putting some bike parking there as well.
I think Hudson's trying to move more and more in that direction, where we're trying to be very bike friendly and pedestrian friendly. So any way that you all could accommodate that into your plan. I mean, I've seen some wonderful, really whimsical bike racks that just aren't the standard old, what we grew up with in public school, that could really be fun, and it could encourage people to use that mode of transportation, which seems to be very much in line with your whole kind of ethos. So yeah, that would be good to include.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I just want to comment too. It does seem like there's an opportunity there to follow up on Steve's comments. I'm not, you know, it seems the board, if we're going to make a recommendation, or if we could make a recommendation directly to the Department of Public Works to do a crosswalk there. I don't think there's an official crosswalk there, like an official ones where pedestrians have the right of way. And that seems like a good idea, especially given the fact that, you know, your business and others with the DRI, et cetera, are gonna, you know, there's going to be significant amount of pedestrian traffic down there. So I'm going to second the motion of having more pedestrian safety, including a formal pedestrian crosswalk in front of the train station.
Well, now people will go to the other side of the street because there's going to be an actual sidewalk to walk on.
Yeah.
Usually you just walked up, you know, the train side. Now you're right. That's a good idea, Clark.
I can get in touch with DPW and the mayor about that. I'm happy to do that. We had a couple of people in our waiting room who have disappeared. So I'm assuming, Shaheem, unless you tell me I'm crazy, that either their questions have been answered or they're no longer waiting. Is that correct?
Yeah, they most likely left out from the wait.
Okay.
And
Okay.
can I ask one more question?
Of course you may.
Wondering about coordination with all of the other facilities in the area. The waterfront park has quite a number of, well, in normal times, a number of events that go on. Basilica does, the Half Moon does, the brewery did, and I don't know if any, if they'll open back up or be replaced. But do you have a plan in place to kind of coordinate with everybody to make sure that there's just not this swarm of folks down here competing for parking and noise and all the other stuff? Bad stereo is not a good thing.
We haven't explicitly discussed it, but in my experience in a position of coordination and management at venues, you keep the contacts of everyone who's in the area pretty close at hand, and often will share schedules with one another, so that there is calendar awareness, and when there are moments of opportunity for supporting or facilitating how things are going to flow for one or the other, it only makes everyone's happenings better. So that's what I would anticipate would be our plan moving forward as we start to get into business.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And interestingly, John, 2 of the support letters that we received came from businesses right down here.
I know, I saw it. Yeah.
So they're not worried about that. And I think it sounds as though these people all have a very friendly, convivial relationship that's already started. So I can't imagine you'd want to outright compete with them, each other. It wouldn't work. So. Okay, board. Since I don't think we have any other questions, I'm going to suggest that we leave. Oh, here is a waiting room person. Hold on. Hello, can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, this is Alderman Dewan.
If you could speak a little more clearly, please.
This is second ward Alderman Dewan Sarwar.
Oh, Dewan, thank you very much. Yes, what did you want to speak about the 60 South Front Street project?
No, actually not that. I want to talk about the whole road with the Colarusa truck going through the Columbia Street, and it's damaging.
Dewan, may I interrupt you? Colaruso is not on the agenda tonight. They are not here.
Okay, but I just want to address this so you guys think about it, because it's destroying.
They're not on the agenda, so we can't hear about them tonight, Dewan, because they're not here. And we need,
I got you.
When we speak about them, they need to be involved in the meeting. So we will hear from them again in July.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for calling.
Okay.
All right, so what I was going to recommend is that we extend this public hearing for 10 more days for public comment. And then this is my suggestion. If you all want to keep it open, you certainly can. But I would entertain a motion that we have 10 more days for public comment and then close the public hearing and make a final decision in July. How does everyone feel about that?
So Betsy, if we do that, it sounds good to me. In that 10 days, within that 10 days, if we receive public comment, that public comment can be discussed at the next meeting?
That's correct. Yes, and I will make sure whenever I receive a letter, I always send it to Linda to be put up on the city website immediately. If there are concerns that I think that we need to hear, I will send them to you immediately so you can address them. And then we can discuss any remaining concerns at the July meeting and perhaps come to a decision on this application. What does everyone think?
I support that.
Okay, so can I have a motion
okay.
to that effect, please? Larry, do you want to make the motion?
I make the motion.
Laura, thank you for making a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and is there any more conversation? Any more discussion? Oh, who seconded? Was that Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda. So I need a roll call vote. Linda, please.
Okay, Betsy,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so this portion of the public hearing is closed, though we will remain open for 10 more days for comment via email or written letter. And I will share anything that I receive with Ben and his team. And we will see you in July, hopefully, to be able to make a decision on your application. So thank you all very, very much. It's a beautiful project, I think.
Wonderful.
you.
We're
Thank
very,
you so
very
much,
grateful.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Talk to you.
Okay. All right. So thank you. We now, yes,
Tom DiPietro wants to say something, I think.
Tom DiPietro wants to say something. Are you there, Tom?
Yes, I am. I just got on. There was a problem with the password. I was trying to get on earlier. So I'm not sure if this came up. But the whole discussion that Steve raised, I wasn't sure if everybody realized that the DRI connectivity project includes complete streets for that very neighborhood.
Well, okay.
So that's crucial for you to know when you're looking at this project, that the city is actually in the middle of this project that will affect the whole connectivity section of the what's called the Bridge District. That is in the Bridge District. So I just thought it was important that you know that. So I wasn't going to join in, but
We're glad you did.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
I know.
Bye. All right, so if we could move on to 620 Union Street, do I have a motion from the board to open the public hearing on 620 Union, a site plan application for 620 Hudson House to renovate and construct a new addition for a hotel requiring 25% expansion of use and a change of use. May I have a
Forward to open.
John, you moved? Do I have a
So
second?
moved. Yeah.
Do I have a second, board?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. 620 Union, who is going to speak on your behalf tonight? Welcome.
Hi, I will kick it off, Betsy. Thank you very much.
Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for your time this evening. I just wanted to take a few moments to introduce myself again and my project. My name's David Kessler, and I'm the founder of Sandstone Partners. And we're under contract to purchase 620 Union, which we are redeveloping into a boutique hospitality project. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and I've lived in New York City since 2002. When I first came to this town, I fell in love with it for the same reasons many of you love Hudson. I love it for its diversity, history, culture, and charm. I relocated to Hudson permanently earlier this year, and I look forward to getting to know you all and contributing to the community. I've worked in real estate development and hospitality my entire career. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I finally took the plunge and started my own company. And I've been looking for a project of a certain size and scale where I could take a historic gem that's currently vacant and dilapidated and redevelop it to make it viable again. This is the only project we are doing right now, and I'm 100% committed to this project, putting everything on the line. When I first saw 620 Union, I knew that this is where I wanted to launch my new business. After studying the market extensively, we created the business plan to redevelop this beautiful historic federal mansion into an independent boutique hotel with approximately 50 rooms, a small restaurant and bar, and other hotel amenities that would be large enough to be economically viable, but small enough to fit within Hudson's ethos of small is beautiful. We want the property to be locally rooted and art and history focused, engaging the local artists and historians to curate experiences for our guests. We also intend to have excellent food and drinks at an accessible price point that would cater to both locals and tourists alike. This project will bring a significant number of new jobs to Hudson, and we are committed to hiring locally. I was attracted to this project because I wanted my new business to focus on historic preservation. As such, it was critical to come up with a streetscape that respects the historic facade, restores and preserves the garden, and saves the two large growth trees. The building located at 620 Union was built in 1835 as the private home and boarding house for Robert and Sally McKinstry. The building sat vacant from 1870, when Robert died, until 1895, when the Home for the Aged purchased the building. The Home for the Aged added a wing to the building in 1906, and the facade was bastardized in several areas over the course of the next 100 years, during which time that the Home for the Aged occupied the building. And we want to bring this building back to its original. The building has sat vacant since 2014. We are extremely excited about this project, and now I'd like to hand it off to my design team. Michael Finney, who's my architect director. I'll hand it off to Mike.
Hi, thank you, David. Thank you, board, for your time this evening. I'm just going to try to share my screen here. Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as David was saying, there's really two primary historic pieces of the property. This is South 7th Street, Union Street, and Cherry Alley. This is the 1835 original historic building, McKinstry Mansion here, and then the 1906 addition here along the back, sort of northern edge of the property along Cherry Alley. And there are really sort of four building elements that we feel have unfortunately hurt the building in a significant way. One is probably first and foremost is a 4-story elevator shaft that really blocks this facade, the western facade. And that's in this area right here. There used to be some historic porches here that were part of the 1906 addition. Those have been unfortunately lost and replaced with steel and concrete fire escapes. And then also a apartment expansion happened here, which is, we think was actually a dining hall originally for the Home for the Aged, but has now been converted into an apartment, which is sort of odd in its aesthetic and geometry to the two historic buildings. And then there was a bathroom addition off the corner here, which really doesn't match the brick. It's kind of an odd finger against this facade. And then probably most importantly is the main front porch. That was removed, again, replaced with steel and concrete. The main stair was lost. A new side stair was added here to the east. And then what was once an open porch with a separate entrance to the lower level was enclosed in with stone. So we'd really like to restore that, bring that back to more of its original grandeur. Also, you can see that the building occupies, a very small percentage of the site. It's a large open site. It's very green. We think there were historic gardens here at one time. There's two large trees, these two trees right here, that we've paid special attention to in the design to preserve. And we really would like to restore those gardens. We've worked with Wagner Hodgson and Dale Schaefer right out of Hudson to come up with a really dynamic landscaping plan. And we've gone back and forth with the landscape architect to inform the geometry and footprint of the building. So I'll pause briefly and hand it over to Dale to talk specifically about the site design and how that informed the building geometry.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Dale Schaefer with Wagner Hodgson here in Hudson. So from the beginning of the project, it's been our goal to re-envision this landscape that is to be appropriate for a historic site. And the attempt to save the two large trees and also a smaller tree that's on the site currently. In our developing of the landscape concept, since there didn't appear to be any clear historic documentation of the landscape of this site, our attempt was to create a probable narrative or a story for the McCrinsky Mansion. And there was likely a formal garden in the front of the original historic building, which is there, which we're bringing to recreate. There was also probably either to the west of that was either a series of terraces or garden rooms or a big park-like space. So what we attempted to do in this landscape plan was to kind of recreate that story narrative. So we, in doing that, we broke the landscape up into 3 zones. The first being the formal garden at the corner of Union and 7th Street, as mentioned before. The second zone is the terraces next to the hotel, which would be essentially the terraces where activity might occur, such as outdoor dining, small gathering space for a fire pit and a spa. And these would be directly connected to the hotel itself. And the third space is this park-like open lawn that would be both a buffer and sort of a visual garden for Union Street. So most of the activity is up against the building, under the shade of the historic trees that are there. And then along the perimeter, along 7th and Union Street, there'll be planted shrubs and ornamentals that would allow for viewing into the garden, but also provide some sense of separation. And with that, go back to Mike to talk more about the facility.
Great, thanks, Dale. And so you can see one of the things that we've done based on the landscape and based on the 2 mature trees and the terraces is really have the addition be more of a recessive element to the primary facade and historic building here, have it tucked back in sort of the northwest corner, and to really preserve the green space, make this a public park-like setting, like Dale said. And we're creating layers of openness and transparency to the public at multiple access points, which is right. Historically, there was a picket fence, and then now there's a hedge, but we'll be opening up areas to really invite public into these terraces and into the main entrance of the hotel. To just take a little step back in time before we look at the new design, these were some of the historic photos that we were able to find of the building. And again, you can see here some of the elements. This historic porch, you can see it here again, and then probably best here. But you can see it had a frieze that was pretty heavily articulated, some columns. It was open below. It had a main stair facing Union. There was no side stair. These are some of the porches that were added in the 1906 edition. We'd like to restore this section of the porch. These were brought in as a series of fire escapes later, which we think really blocked this facade, which we're going to try to bring back and celebrate a little bit more in the proposed design. And then to look at what's there now, here's a current day view. You can see that the porches have lost. They're really just steel and concrete fire escapes. This is that 1-story addition that was added, now an apartment. This is that little finger bathroom addition that was added on. The front porch is lost. This has been replaced with stone, which is kind of an inappropriate material for what was there, along with a side stair which we think is fighting with the main symmetry and access point of the building. When you look onto the South 7th Street facade, that's probably the most intact. Unfortunately, the windows are not original, and there was a series of storms that were placed over them, which we're going to bring those back to a better aesthetic. And then this is kind of looking back towards the gardens now with some of the hedges and bushes. And this is one of the mature trees that when in bloom is just quite fantastic. So we'd like to save that. Just quickly, the interior has been largely gutted, but a lot of the historic moldings and trims are in place. The fireplaces have been restored, most of them. And we're even able to find some of the historic fireplace surrounds, which we will reuse in the new design. So to give you just a quick orientation of the building itself, there's a full story slope and grade from the South 7th Street side out to the western edge of the property. So levels are a little bit confusing, but because that slope happens with a full story, we can put a basement under the main addition, which would be some support spaces and some meeting spaces, maybe small spa and fitness room. On the main ground floor, which is really the garden level, and this is where that main entrance is occurring. We're being very careful to make that entrance be a sort of like a glass gasket, or many of the Department of Interiors will talk about gasketing between a historic building and a new building. We're doing that right here. We'll show you that later in elevations and renderings. The new dining space will occupy what was historically a dining room, but that will be the new restaurant lounge. There'll be a bar area here, and then some kitchen and support spaces, bathrooms in the back. To the west, as the property steps back and slopes back, there'll be those garden terraces that Dale talked about, and then some guest rooms. And then as you move up in the building, the next level up is really the porch level entrance of the historic building. So these are the sort of historic core of the building. There's a parlor room here, which we were going to restore and bring back, have that be a kind of a gathering point, social sort of lounge relaxation point for guests, along with that dining lounge space below. And then the rest of the building are really guest rooms with some circulation, fire stairs, elevators tucked in here. As you move up the building, additional guest rooms on those levels. There are some balconies and a proposed green roof terrace. And that gasket point, you can see that we're really lightly touching here where the new building meets the old with just this intersection. And then the last level is the uppermost level of the historic 1835 building, which would be 4 guest rooms up in here. So what might this...
Excuse me, sorry.
Yes.
Where's the front desk? Where do I check in?
Yeah, so you would check in right here. The front desk is right here. We didn't show the furniture on this plan, but there's a front desk right here. This is the entry vestibule lobby. Front desk will be here. Elevator back here, and main stair.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what might this look like? We're really following the form and massing along the alley with the north face, where there's a plinth that exists on the existing building, and we're reusing some of those brick materials to echo what was historically there, but not copy it in any way. As we move to the front of the building, one of the things that we're, again, to point out is really to restore that front porch. There's the open elements to below. There was an entrance there that was there that we'll restore, bring back. That would be a direct entry into the bar lounge area. New central stair facing Union Street. The side stair has been removed, and then the historic elements of the porch have been restored. Same goes for the porch here on the back of the 1906 edition. We're going to bring that porch back. That will be partially interior as well as exterior. That's on the interior will be a dining terrace overlooking the 2-story restaurant space. And on the outside, it will provide private balconies for the new guest rooms that will be up there. Here's that glass gasket that we were talking about. And this is the main entrance, which would go into that lobby lounge. And so you would walk through that central pathway through the garden into the main entrance. And then the new addition. This has a lot of 3-dimensional aspects to it, which I'll show you in the renderings. We're using a clapboard, or sort of a historic clapboard siding, so not to compete with the brick building. We don't think we can copy or those elements. We are going to use some brick on the lower level of the plinth with more of a New England character here with a modern interpretation of what was on the site. So just going to the other elevations, this is obviously the 7th Street elevation. It's really a restoration project. It's going to stay pretty much intact with just some patching, repairing the roof and restoration of the masonry and the windows. And then on the north, or really northwest side is facing the church is this facade elevation. One of the things that we're really being special care to take is to make sure that the new addition is substantially lower than the historic building. So it's a story less than the 1835 building. You can see that here in the background. Whoops. So what might this look like in real life, and kind of standing in that just off the corner of the dining terrace looking back? This is the main entrance of the building with the vestibule into the main lobby. You can see this with the reception desk sort of in the background here. Thinking of adding the primary building signage here, probably put another one on 7th Street corner. But this would be the new restaurant space with an outdoor dining terrace and some retractable awnings. We're purposely designing this to be a very light, transparent facade that you can see through, so you can see that the original porch, which will be restored, and then you'll have the upper level of that, which you'll see from the street. Some shed dormers off on the new addition with some exterior balconies. Again, we're using some dark charcoal colors to make it more recessive and to complement the existing building, but not copy it in any way. As we zoom back, this is the sort of walking back over that grass terrace area, standing on the sidewalk of Union Street, looking back at the project, primarily the 1835 building. You can see these are the more formal gardens that will be restored, the new stair, new porch, some new trees that we're proposing. This is one of the existing trees that's the one I pointed out in the existing condition picture. Whoops. And then if you now stepped off of that terrace and walked up to the corner of 7th and Union, we're looking back from that intersection, you can see that this would be kind of a broad view of the restored gardens. This is the formal gardens, the 2 grass lawn areas, and then the terrace areas that were back here, the dining terrace, and then the more private terraces for very small, intimate gatherings, potential fire pit, small spa in here, and then the new addition tucked behind the mature trees. And this is just zooming in as if you were standing in that grass terrace looking just at the addition and how that may look and feel. You can see the 2 mature trees in your foreground, the entrance path, which would be bordered by some landscaping, and then the gable end pediment with some clapboard siding in the background. So I think I'll pause there to see if we have any initial public comment, and then after that, we can get into any technical aspects of the application and any additional questions the board has from last month.
Thanks very much, Michael. That was very complete. Those are beautiful renderings.
Thank you.
Board, do you have particular questions? I don't believe there's anyone waiting. at the moment. So board, take it away. I'll let the public in as they call.
I started the last time. Maybe I'll start this time too. You mentioned a fire pit. There is a prohibition to open burning in the city of Hudson. So will it be that kind of fire pit, or will it be something other than that?
Oh, no, it'd be gas. So it wouldn't be open burning. It would just be a gas fire pit. So it'd be, you know, for some warmth, but more atmosphere.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I had a question, I guess, in a comment too. I think all the open space in front is great. And the garden restoration is really kind of amazing. I wrote down a quick note to myself as you're speaking. You mentioned sort of public access. And my note to myself is the public customers or is the public? Which, you know, is there a line between what customers can use and what the public can use? Or maybe you just misspoke that it's not really public access, it's just customer access.
Well, actually, the restaurant will be open, the restaurant and the bar will be open to both people visiting the hotel and the public. So the goal is to have public access to the restaurant and then bar lounge, and to encourage them to come to the facility as well. So we imagine there'd be a mix of people both staying in the hotel and hopefully public diners as well.
Right. So maybe you misunderstood my question. I apologize if I wasn't clear. It's really sort of the public space area. And again, you mentioned public access, and I get it that the public has customers, but I can imagine the public thinking that it's public space that one might use not being a customer, like other public spaces around town.
Right.
Like, you know, if I wanted to have a picnic on the lawn in front of the Black Blackbird, it's not public space.
Right.
I couldn't show up with a Frisbee and a friend.
Right. No, I guess I meant for, you know, public access to visit the restaurant and bar lounge.
But if I want
site. So certainly didn't intend it to be a, you know, public park where anything can sort of go. But
if people wanted to walk through the gardens and just look around.
They certainly could do that. Yes.
But it is private.
Yeah, we would encourage that actually. So.
Yeah, it's not a public park. It's a privately owned property.
Right. Yeah. At the last meeting, I think that I'm misremembering, or we asked for an accounting of the type of vendor, you know, trucks, etc. That would be happening on Cherry Alley.
Yes.
Did we receive that?
Yeah, we did. Maybe, I don't know, Chad, if you want to talk about that. We did submit that based on talking with potential operators and the owner. So that was a letter that was sent in from Taconic. And it was...
Sorry, I must have missed it.
Yeah, it was by Creighton Manning Engineers, our traffic engineers.
Okay.
Yeah, we submitted that letter. The applicant did talk to the local operators, and you know, they talked to the food and beverage and trash and laundry and cleaning services to get an idea of how many trucks they would require. And based on those conversations, it's estimated that they would need about 23 to 27 trucks per week. So that breaks down to about 3 to 4 a day. So if you're looking at 3 or 4 a day, but some of those may actually already be on the network, you know, the garbage trucks, the food trucks may be already in the area. So they're not new to the city and new to maybe even these roadways, just adding another stop to the route. But so you're looking at 3 to 4 trucks a day, and the adjacent roadway network we feel could accommodate 3 to 4 trucks a day. And I believe the applicant would be willing to speak to the adjacent owners to even, you know, if they could, with those local providers, you know, schedule things so there aren't, you know, overlap within Cherry Alley.
I'd like to know a little bit more about the alley, by the way. I mean, so we have, that's where our dumpsters are, right? what kind of mechanical equipment is back there? Is that where the exhaust fans are for the restaurant? And there's a fitness area that's going to be ducting out to the alley. Where is all of the mechanical equipment? Is it visible from the alley? I mean, the alleys in Hudson are they're unique, right? They have real character, and I love the attention to the sort of front of house spaces in the renderings, but I would also like to know what the sort of back of house looks like, and is the alley just going to become behind you a kind of sweaty, steamy condition back there?
Yeah, I think actually we've in the floor plan, we've created this break in the back between the new addition and the existing building, kind of create a recess here for a dumpster and for service delivery to give them some relief off of Cherry Alley, where the building has been, obviously we're trying to really be sensitive to the courtyard and the mature trees, but we're kind of preserving that line that exists now between on Cherry Alley with this building and then the new addition. And then we've built into the roof top here, we've built in a kind of a hidden mechanical court. So a lot of the exhaust and things of the building will go up through there and be screened. You won't see it. You definitely will not see it from the alley because of the angle. It'll be up on the very top here, tucked into the.
Is that the rectangle in the third floor plan?
Yes. Well, yes, it's right here. This is the mechanical court. So it's sort of we're doing a gable structure, and then we're kind of cutting this little mechanical court out of it, so that most of your mechanical equipment and exhaust and things can be up here and be hidden from view. So we have thought about that, and we think it's still an attractive facade, and it kind of emulates the sort of solid kind of punch window facade that's there in the 1906 edition.
Do you have a rendered elevation of that rear facade?
The rear facade is here.
Yeah, okay, I see it.
Yep. So you can see we've kind of kept as close as possible to this height. Because of the footprint's a little wider here, this roof line's a little higher, but the eave line is pretty much in line with the 1906 edition. Floor heights are aligned. This would be the glass gasket. This is where you'd have that recess where a dumpster could be tucked back away from the street. Any kitchen exhaust could be accommodated here.
So the glass doesn't go down to the alley level. It's on the top two floors on the rear side?
Yeah, it's on the top two floors here, and then it's all the way down on the opposite side. We did leave a little bit of solid piece here just for, penetrations, vent penetrations and things like that. That might happen associated with the kitchen. But then we are doing a full brick facade here all the way down the alley. Kind of complement the existing building, and then sort of the typical punch-out windows that you would see in a hotel. And then as you turn the corner, this is really what you'd see on the corner. This will be highly visible from the alley, looking kind of back at the property. Some Juliet balconies here with the pediment, and clapboard siding again with the brick pediment underneath.
Board, could I invite quickly a member of the public in here just because they've been waiting for a minute, and then we can get back to your questions? Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, I would like to invite 755-6624. If you could please identify yourself. Appreciate it.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, am I in the public hearing now?
You are. Would you identify yourself?
Yes, it's Sam Pratt calling.
Hello, Sam
I
Pratt.
reside in Taconic, but I also share a rental space at 609 Warren, which is a building that backs onto to Cherry Alley.
Thanks, Sam. Go ahead.
Well, I was calling because I wanted to make sure, first of all, that my public comments were received. I assume so. And like Larry, those comments focused almost entirely on the alley. And I just want to see if there are any questions about it. I can kind of reiterate the main points. My historical research suggests that the area that the addition is occupying has been empty, open space for as long as almost 150 years. The 1873 Beers map shows that as empty, apart from what was then the Rossman house on the corner of Union and 7th. So people like myself who've enjoyed for many years, and some of the tenants in the building and the building next door have been there a lot longer than I have, have enjoyed that view to the south for a very long time. As I said in my comments, I'm not opposing the project, but I do think it needs to be noted that the folks who have spaces that look on the alley, and there's some whose apartments or workspaces exclusively look onto the alley, are now going to be facing a dark canyon, not a view of an open garden. And I tried to propose, rather than saying don't build it, I tried to propose some suggestions as far as bringing the height down even a little. I think would make a big difference in terms of the amount of light that would get down into the alley. And I think as well, moving the addition a little bit southward towards Union, even by a small amount, would both allow more light down into the alley and would also alleviate the congestion there. I mean, I've worked and lived in Hudson for on and off for over 20 years, and I can't count the number of times that I said to myself, why did I go up the alley? Because there's a Baldor food truck behind what was then Earth Foods or Mexican Radio. And, if the driver isn't really conscientious about pulling right along the building, you cannot get by. And then you got to run in to the business and try to get them to move or else back out. I think for their own sanity, it would probably make things a lot easier if that addition was moved a little bit off the alley. Even 5 or 10 feet would make a tremendous difference. And I don't think the value of keeping that line at the back of the mansion really is that crucial. It does appear that there's some space in the front to move the whole massing just a little forward. That little cut in doesn't look like anything anybody can pull into, and we're just going to 27 times a month, it sounds like the alley is going to be impassable. So that was the bulk of it. I like the idea of the project. I did attempt to contact the developer and offered to send him my comments beforehand, to see if we could discuss it. He did not feel the need to see my diagrams, I guess, and I don't see any changes in the plan, so I'm calling in to comment.
Thank you,
That's about
Sam.
it.
I'm not sure, David and Mike, if you have seen the letter and the renderings that Sam sent that show the shadow line in the alley. And if you have not, I will send them to you.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that should see them other than
Just, Betsy, if I could add one thing,
Yes,
I would just think
yes,
it would be
Sam.
worth having an actual visualization of the alley with as proposed, and possibly as an alternative, if the board is interested in seeing an alternative, what it would look like, pushed a little bit southward, the amount of breathing space there, I think will make a big difference. And since the mansion and the existing addition are sort of a complex shape as it is, again, I don't think maintaining that strict line along the alley. I'm thinking, for instance, of my friend Sarah Burney, who's been in the building for, I think, probably 25 years. She has her home and her studio on the second floor. She paints in there, more than my place, which is on the top floor. She is going to lose almost all of her life. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. David and Mike, I will make sure you get those JPEGs so that you can look. And board, for your information, Linda has posted Sam's comments on the city website.
Okay.
I think it might be useful to see a site section that actually has you know, from the sidewalk through the garden, through the either the gasket or the bulk of the building, and then the height of the neighbor, so that we know whether Sam's diagram is you know, comports with reality, especially given the full story change in grade across the length of the site.
Right. Yeah, I think, you know, it's something we definitely willing to explore. And it's probably worth noting also that the zoning allows for 100% coverage in this property and being an urban lot and an urban infill property. And we've gone through great lengths to really cover minimal amount of it. I think we're well under 40% coverage, something like that. So, you know, we're not requesting any variances in height or setbacks in any way, trying to be conforming to what zoning recommends and allows for this property. So we're happy to look at that and see what we can do and respond accordingly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Board, other questions or comments?
So will you be able to provide, I just wanted to just clarify if therefore the applicant is going to supply the diagram that Larry just suggested? Are you going to be able to supply that?
Yeah, I think we could do that. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
One other thing that I'd like to mention, if I may, regarding the deliveries. Again, I want to reiterate that I want to be a good neighbor and work with all of my neighbors on Cherry to make sure that to coordinate deliveries. I want to reiterate that. And I also want to say that, you know, for the period from 1895 until 2014, there were between 25 and 30 people living there 24/7 with a similar demand for truck deliveries that we will have. I think that's an important, you know, for over 100 years, up until just 2014. Very similar demand for truck deliveries that we will have.
Well, Hudson's changed a lot even since 2014, though. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot more going on in the alley.
I respect that. I understand.
Okay. The project's beautiful.
Jane Trombley, are you there somewhere? Or did you drop off? I don't see her in the waiting room. Any other board questions? So are there other, we had talked about parking.
Jane is here at the bottom. I mean, she's,
Betsy, sorry to interrupt. This is Jane Trombley. I've just signed on. I just got the proper credentials. So I've been on 5 seconds.
Did you have a question, Jane?
No, because I haven't heard anything yet. Sorry. I heard my name and I'm just wanting to know I'm here. I don't have a question. I haven't really heard anything yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm wondering, you know, David, there has been some concern about, there's always concern in parking, about parking. And I know that you all have done a parking study with Creighton Manning that was very detailed. Have you explored with the city the opportunity for perhaps your employees to park in the municipal lot that's across the street, or maybe even some guest overflow parking? I know that the WIC has rented spaces for their guests from the city, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing, as perhaps a gesture of good faith, so that everyone's not parking on the street.
We haven't broached that with the city yet, but whether, you know, we get a certain number of parking permits that our employees and guests can use, and maybe they can use this lot during these days and times and that lot during, you know, we're willing to do that, or simply have, you know, the guests, you know, feed the meters. You know, we're open.
So. Okay, thank you. just given that there is that mini lot right there, it might be a great place, at least for employee parking. So just something to think about. It might be a good neighbor bit of outreach.
But relative to that,
I think the Barlow.
Outreach to, who would I be reaching out to?
Let me find out.
Thank
I'd be happy to find out.
All right.
Teresa, you have a question?
Yes, I was looking at the minutes, and I know last time we talked about the Porter Depart, whatever that was, the pull-in and
the port cachere.
Yeah. And then they talked about the parking on the side. But my main question was the loading and the unloading and the reception of the guests. And I don't see where that had been addressed. We were saying that the two spots that they had, I felt were just too close to the corner, and that the cars on 7th Street are all pull-ins, which kind of cut your vision and make cars pull out so that they could see. Like I said, I have to pull out and I'm going to my left. So was anything looked at there? Like,
yeah, we did study that. I don't,
that you can have the reception of the guests.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are 2 dedicated spots right now, right here on the street for easy pull in, pull out. And then there's an existing fire hydrant down here and some street trees and so on. But we did, I think Chad can get into that later on. We did look at that. If we could pull up, I could give up control, and Chad, if you want to pull up that image, that diagram, we did submit that to the city, that pull off with, where a pull off that would come off the street and then back on. And Mark, maybe you could talk about that.
But didn't someone say something about contacting the city to maybe have the cars on 7th Street parked differently or something?
Yeah, well, that came up as well, and that's certainly something we'd be open to. That's more of a city issue, but certainly if they felt it was appropriate to do that, we would have no objection to switching the angle of that. It really comes down to what the city wants there.
Right. We understand that that's a DPW question. So anything we do wouldn't preclude that. But then if the city ever wanted to change to that, they could, and it would not, these plans would not impact changing that angled parking, but that is more of a city issue.
Yes, it is. The 7th Street parking really has nothing to do with you all, and I do know that. Could I just ask a little bit more about this dedicated parking in front for guests? Is that very much like what the Barlow has, where it's sort of a spot that's not allowed for parking? It's just for guests check in and then they move their cars?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. All right.
Can I ask another parking question?
Of course, John.
Have you considered the fact that that parking lot across the street that Betsy had referred to is used for farmers market that's held at 601?
Yes.
There is demand for that lot, and other people that work on Warren Street and other streets within the area also park there. And you'd mentioned having your residents plug the meters. Well, that might, I'm not sure that I'd want to keep going out to put money in a meter. But have you given any other thought to alternatives for parking at this point in time, or?
We're happy to buy permits, annual permits from the city.
Well, the permits are fine, but what I'm talking about is the competition for the spaces more than the permits.
I understand completely, John, but in purchasing those, I would say that we would work it out with the city. And I understand that the demand for the municipal lot across the street is higher on the Saturdays during the winter. So on Saturdays during the winter, those permits are valid at any of the municipal lots, and our customers would park during those times at one of the other municipal lots instead.
I might also add there's the mental health building just up the street, which has no activity on the weekends. That might be an interesting opportunity too. That's a county building.
We reached out to them, and it was just, to try to structure a deal based on, renting for overnight and weekend when they're not using that lot. And, we based our, but we couldn't come to an agreement because, we based it on what one would pay for a metered space, or what one would pay for an annual parking permit space. That's, what we based here's what we can pay for renting those spaces when they're not being used during office hours. And they said their response was essentially that it's not worth their time, basically.
Sorry about that. That's too bad. That's unfortunate, but not your problem. Not your problem.
Question, but to the left of the new addition, is there land over there that's yours? Is there or behind? Actually, my thing says that I'm having internet connection problems. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're a little broken up, Laura, but we can hear you.
Okay. I'm just wondering if there's any place to eke out some parking spaces.
Yeah.
To the left of the new addition.
I'm having a little trouble with my document here. I'm sorry.
There's metered spaces all along Union, right, Mike? So.
Right.
But you're going to have your overnight guests pay meters? I guess I don't get it. Or your employees are going to use metered parking?
You don't use the meters overnight, though. They're only until 5 p.m.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you're going to run a business, though, where they're going to have to get up in the morning to, I guess I don't understand it. Or your employees will have to run out during the day to put money in the meter?
Like Betsy said, I would love to, simply, I know that you can go to the county clerk's office and buy an annual parking permit for the municipal lots, where you can park in any of those municipal lots, and you pay $250 a year for that permit. And I would be happy, during our peak time, Mark can speak to this, but the demand is 31 spaces during our peak time. So I'm happy to buy 31 annual parking spaces at $250 a year from the city. And during Saturdays in the winter, I simply tell my guests and employees, you can't park at this lot, you're going to have to park at that lot. I'm happy to do that.
I mean, I just think you need to consider that other people live on that street. It's, yeah, could you check into that for us? To confirm that they're available, because as John says, that's a busy lot.
Well, that's what we did with our parking study. Mark, do you want to speak to that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the study that we did looked within 1/8 of a mile of the site, which is like a 4-minute walk, and it includes the 2 municipal lots. And we're talking about 540 spaces within that 1/8 of a mile, of which, overnight there were over 300 spaces available on a Friday and 280 on the Saturday. So, even if our demand is off by twofold, even if we go from 30 to 60 spots required, there's more than enough supply on the adjacent streets to provide that demand, or to supply that demand. And I understand that some, people in the area feel that the parking spaces right in front of their homes are, almost dedicated to their home. And, you know, they're a little bit further down the road. And so there are on-street parking on 6th Street, on 7th, on Union, in the municipal lot on Union. So we feel that the parking will stay in the vicinity of the hotel. They'll try to get as close as possible. And, you know, where the more residential homes are towards the west, they'll be, you know, used less and less by the hotel. But like I said, I mean, there's, you know, within an 1/8 of a mile, there's quite a bit of on-street parking and municipal parking available. And, you know,
So I guess what I'm asking is, can you come back to the next meeting with a guarantee that the city is able to rent you those 31 spaces?
I mean, whether I pay for those spaces or my customers are paying the city to park in those spaces. What's
That's a no.
Didn't really, no, I'm not or no, Laura. It's just, does it matter who's paying for the spaces, whether it's me or my customer?
Let's move on, Betsy. I've got my answer.
Okay. Any other?
Well, I think also it's important, I think Mark didn't mention, but there obviously is even with that 30 space demand, but there is a fair amount of public transportation that happens here as well that's not even factored in there. There are people taking the train. I imagine a lot of, you know, certain percentage of the guests will not even have a car. So that's worth mentioning. Just wanted to bring that up.
But again, I would love to, you know, buy 31 parking permits from the city. I would love to.
Good. Just like to know that they're available to you, if you could find that out. Okay, that's it. I mean,
okay, board, other questions? So how would you all like to proceed with this public hearing?
Let's see, do you want to do the same thing as the last one? We have a 10-day window and then we close the public hearing?
Would you like to make that motion, Larry?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there any more discussion?
I guess just on the question of coming back with the renderings to understand the impact on light that Sam Pratt raised on Cherry Alley. Is that going to happen during the 10-day public comment period, or how does that work with this motion?
That's a good question, Steve. When we close the public hearing, we're closing the public comment. It doesn't mean that this board is finished discussing this application. It just means that after 10 more days, we think that we're going to have enough information to move. We don't need any new information, so we still will be asking them to look at the height of the buildings on Warren Street and that impact that Sam brought up, and working with I'll be finding out who David should out to about this. So it's not an end to us discussing it. It's just an end to the public input part. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Laura.
Well, but then the public would not have had the opportunity to see the renderings. I mean, I'm making a comment, so I don't have an answer.
I see. That's a good point. Board, what do you think of that?
Is there a way for us to post whatever documentation we receive from the applicant and then add 10 days to that receipt? Or does it have to happen it has to coincide with one of our meetings?
That is such a good question that I don't know the answer to.
I would think we'd have to take a vote on that. So it probably would have to happen at a meeting, wouldn't we?
Yes, I think the 10-day window is to allow the public 10 more days to comment, but
right.
Laura has a very valid point that if these renderings are not posted within 10 days, they don't have the opportunity to comment.
Yeah, that concerns me, even though I made the motion.
May withdraw it.
Typically, as the applicant, we would look to the board to take in the public's concerns allow us the opportunity to address them and then to the board to decide if those addressments that we made properly showed the solutions for those issues.
So it sounds
It's
like,
the board's determination.
But I
so it
think,
sounds like we should keep the public hearing process open, Betsy, to me.
Yeah.
Board, someone can make a motion to that effect. Absolutely.
I think, respectfully, to get all the comments in so that we can then respond to them for the next meeting, and then they can be addressed at the meeting, is certainly something we can do. I think we've heard Sam's comments. We'll get his diagrams, and then depending upon what he sends us, we'll try to be as responsive as possible to that. I think it still allows you the ability to discuss those in detail at the next meeting.
I actually agree with you, but I'm not the deciding factor. Teresa, yes.
Could they provide maybe a website that the public can go on to see all the renderings?
The renderings. Can you all post this PowerPoint? Can you send it to me so that I can post it on the city website?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the public can just go and see and make their comments. And then we can.
What an excellent idea, Teresa. Thank you.
Sure.
So I move that we keep the public hearing process open. Is that what you need?
If that's what your motion is, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Clark. Okay, Linda, would you do a roll call on that?
Betsy,
No.
Clark,
Yes.
Larry,
No.
Stephen,
No.
Laura,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Okay. We will keep the public hearing open for another month. And David and Mike, I will be in very close touch with you about getting this information from Sam, and also talking to the city about this idea of renting muni spaces. And I will talk to DPW. I'm not putting that on you about that angle parking, just to see what their feeling is about that.
Can I add something else?
Of course.
Someone talked when you took the DPW. Wasn't it one time the city was selling spaces?
I'm sorry, Teresa, I couldn't understand you.
The city was selling spaces. John, do you know anything about that? At one time, the city was selling public parking spaces.
No, I don't remember that.
Maybe to residents. At one time, giving you permits to park in a sidewalk in front of your house or nothing.
They talked about that in the hospital region, but that never went through the city. It didn't go through the
Because I was thinking maybe they can give a proposal to the city to buy the spaces on 7th Street and let that be their area, maybe for loading and unloading and whatever.
Well, I can certainly talk to the mayor
Betsy?
about that. Yes.
About the 7th Street parking.
Tom,
That
are
angle-
you back?
Excuse me?
Is that you, Tom?
No, sorry. I thought you could see me. Yeah, no. I investigated that after your last meeting, and
Who is talking? I'm sorry.
Tom DiPietro.
your neighbor, Tom. The angle parking is actually in our code. So it would take the city council to change the parking, not DPW, not the police.
Okay.
That's good.
So that could always happen.
Who has the right to sell the side?
Nobody.
Anybody have the right to sell city parking to?
No.
No, okay.
No.
And just Tom?
Yes.
Even if it were to create 2 parking spaces on 7th Street, eliminating the angled parking only, you'd still have to do the common council.
Yes, because it's in the,
all right,
it's in the
okay.
code.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
There are all those angular parking spaces around the city are established by the code.
All right, okay.
So we wouldn't even need to involve the DPW or the police.
Oh,
Okay,
then
thank
they
you, John.
would-
You're welcome. Bye.
So does that mean they have to go to the council? Common council?
Yes.
Yes.
It looked like, sorry, I don't know who was trying to post images, maybe it was Chad, of a study that you made of a drop off internal to the site. It would be nice if you could also forward those images to us because they didn't load earlier this evening.
Very good.
Chad and Mark, do you want to speak to the pros and cons of that? I don't think we really got to that.
Right, and I was trying to get my image to come up so that I could show what that is, and for some reason I'm having trouble loading that.
So I think that's fine. I think we can probably discuss that next month because we're keeping the public hearing open, right? So if you're able to forward those things to us by email, we can upload them to the city's website. The public can have a chance to look at those things and we can discuss the pros and cons of that when we have the documentation.
Very good.
Okay.
And one last thing, I suddenly it's not on the bicycle guy. I don't know why, but lots of cute little hotels have little bikes, tagged bikes that advertise the hotel, and guests can fetch a bike from at or near the lobby and ride it around town. Perhaps the cool bike racks down by the train station would be a great place to park some of your bikes. But it seems to me that as we're talking about these things, they could be, there could be some synergy, right? That, if we're going to assert that not everyone is arriving by private car, which is great, then we could facilitate that by making sure that there are other alternatives that are in place.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, great idea.
I mean, we were going to have, a bike share for our hotel guests anyway, but the idea of parking one or two of them down by the train is a great idea.
All right. Well, David, Mike, team, John, everybody, thank you. This is an exciting project, and
Thank you.
I will get everything to you that you need, and if you can get the PowerPoint to us, I will make sure it's loaded up on the city website, and we'll be good.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, board, thank you. I'm wondering if there are members of the public. I like to put in a little slot on the agenda for things that don't make our agenda. I'll give you an example and invite the public to comment on them. I'll give you an example, and that is our stewards on Green Street. They promised to put in a garden, and they still have big old ugly bollards and no plants there. And I'm going to ask Craig to contact them and get them to get to work on that garden project because it looks horrible. So if there are other things, public, that you would like the board to know relative to projects like that, or things that you're seeing around town, I want to make sure that you know that this board is open to hearing from you. And you may be seeing things out there that we don't know about or we're not aware of that would be appropriate for the planning board to weigh in on. So I'm inviting you to do that, if not right at this moment, to always make sure that you can reach out to any one of us and make your concerns known. We want to hear from you. So moving on to old business, did you all have a chance to review the minutes of May 12 and May 18? Are there any additions, changes, edits to those minutes? Linda, you did a spectacular job as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything you want, board, any adjustments we need to make? All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 12, 2020?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Larry. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Linda, would you do a roll call, please?
Betsy,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
And the minutes of our May 18th special meeting, do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Teresa. Linda, would you roll call, please?
Hey, Teresa,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Betsy.
Yes. Well, actually, you mixed that up, Linda. That was very good. So if we can move on to the Spark and 502 Union Street, we are reviewing a site plan application to convert a professional office building at 502 Union Street into a mixed commercial residential use with a coffee shop, event space, classroom training, and residential. Who would like to present on behalf of the Spark tonight?
This is Albert Wenger and
Susan Danziger. Hi.
Hello, Suzanne and Albert. Thank you for submitting that additional information to us. Really appreciate it, board. I hope you took the time to look over that information that they submitted.
And we
It is
have
also on the city website.
yeah, and we have Chad and Joni here as well if there are further questions.
Great. Board, do you have questions for the Spark?
Yeah, I had a question. There are two questions. The roof plan, level 3, shows a spiral staircase. Where is that going, up or down to or from? It's not clear to me. And then I also wasn't clear on what the Spark residence component of the proposal.
Sure. Let me maybe briefly speak to the Spark residence component, and which we had talked about briefly last time, and then Joni can speak to the spiral staircase. There are multiple use cases for the residence component. One is that we will be providing sort of professional training for people how to make rooms, because one of the things we've heard from people who own hotels like Rivertown Lodge or the Maker is that they're constantly in search of personnel that's well trained. That's one. The other use is we will have people stay there who teach classes at the Spark. And then the final use case, which we've discussed with people from the library and Hudson Hall, is that occasionally those are venues that invite people to be speakers, and we would make our rooms available to put up those speakers as well. And we ourselves may occasionally stay there, but we have a place in Taconic, and so this would be quite unusual for us. Joni, you want to talk briefly about the spiral staircase?
Certainly. So on that roof plan that you see, there is a spiral staircase on in that small room that leads up to a very small catwalk mezzanine that is 150 square feet in size. And the purpose of that is essentially, as you can see in some of the views of the building, there is a clerestory, and the mezzanine brings you up to the level where you can see out of the clerestory, and there's like a view of the Catskills there.
So this is an interior space, to be clear. This
exactly, yes.
The spiral staircase and that mezzanine are entirely interior to the top.
Right.
Unit.
So it's a small accessory space for viewing.
And just as a reminder to the board, as the planning board, we don't really review interior spaces. But I know that we had questions about how the change of use was going to work. So they very kindly provided that information to us so that we could see what the change of use would be. And I want to thank you all for doing that. We don't have any jurisdiction over that, but it helps us understand much better what it is you're doing in your plan.
Makes perfect sense. So happy to provide it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? I think we're probably ready to put this to a public hearing. Do I have a motion to that effect, that we ask the Spark people to join us for a public hearing in July?
I move that we do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Laura. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Steve?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Linda, would you do a roll call?
Betsy,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right, Spark people. I'm sorry to call you that. It just sounds so fun.
We're happy. That's good. All good.
We invite you to our July meeting for a public hearing, and we wish you the best of luck. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Wonderful. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much.
Thanks so much, you guys. Bye.
Bye. Do we have Scott or somebody from Verizon here tonight? I thought so.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Yes, you are, Scott. Good evening. I know this is a sorry, board. 119 Columbia Street. Verizon has approached us with a special use permit application to install and operate wireless communications equipment on the roof of Providence Hall. We don't have a formal application from you yet, Scott, so that we don't really have a lot to discuss tonight. But I do know that you had asked us, and I'm remiss, I apologize, for sightline, so that you know how to have your engineers give us sightline information.
Correct. You know, we're working on the application as we speak. Your code requires us to come to you before we submit the application for the pre-application meeting, which we started last, I think it was the 18th, the special meeting.
It was.
Yeah, and then I think after that, we gave you some photo simulations of what we did for the prior application to give you an idea of kind of, and it's in a, obviously, I think it's like across the street, it's not too far away. So we're just looking right now, if the board has locations for us to take pictures to provide the visual information, we can do that now. Or we can submit the application without that information and wait until you tell us at that point.
We knew we're going to want that information from you, Scott. So I actually was going to either ask for a volunteer or assign a board member to take on this project. If someone would like to volunteer to go over to the neighborhood where Providence Hall is, and they very kindly submitted a map that shows the impact visually, even from Athens. So if someone would be willing to go take a look, spend an hour comparing the map that they submitted with the various sightlines around the city, so that we can actually have them give us real photographic renderings so that we know what we're looking at. I would really appreciate a volunteer. If not, I'm happy to assign someone to this project.
I'll volunteer, Betsy.
Thank you, Steve.
Betsy, are you asking us to go to Providence Hall and look at the places where they say they're going to put the antennas?
Teresa, Steve just offered to go over. There is a plan that Scott submitted to us. It's a big circle, and it shows where the different points of sight are, where you're going to be able to see the antennas potentially. So I would we want to make sure that we have photographs from some of those spots done by Verizon.
I was hoping that you were assigning us to go look for other places where they can put
other places.
Yeah, other than Providence Hall. That's what I thought.
Scott, that does bring up an interesting question I had actually, which is because Providence Hall is a residential building, are there places like the Health and Human Services building, which is a county building, where people don't actually reside? Did you all consider, is it basically the same neighborhood? And I'm not exactly sure, Scott, what our ability is to go deep with you here. I'm afraid I don't know.
Sure.
But what other than Bliss Towers and Providence Hall, what other buildings have you explored?
Those were the two that we, as I mentioned the last time, Providence Hall was the first one that we explored
Yep.
due to its height and the location within what they call the search area. That I'm sorry, what's that?
I think you mean the tall building, Bliss Towers is the first one.
Yes.
No, it
Well,
started at
I'm
Providence
sorry.
Hall.
I'm sorry. We started at Providence Hall, but the owner at the time, a few years back, didn't want to enter into a lease with us. So we moved on, and we moved on to Bliss Towers, and that was a whole nother story. And we're not there now for various reasons. So we went back to the owner of Providence because it works very well for what we're trying to do. I mean, if people are concerned about the safety, I understand that. We hear that a lot. There is no safety issue, but I can tell you, we will explore the alternatives in the formal application. We will have our engineer describe what was looked at and why it has to be in a certain location. That comes as part as the RF justification.
Okay, that would be very helpful.
Sure.
And Scott, I will send you a letter that we received from some neighbors.
Okay.
With concerns, so that you all can speak to that in your, when we get to the public hearing, you know that that's going to be an issue and you can prepare your remarks on that.
Sure, sure.
And is there anyone else, Scott, that I should send that to, or you're the rep for this and you're?
You can send it directly to me and I'll get it to the right people, which actually is me, so.
I'll send it to you so you can send it to you. Okay.
Thank you.
I had a question, sorry, Betsy, regarding the concerns. And just correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that if one is located at a certain location, that essentially opens a door to others going there. In other words, there's a I guess a policy to co-locate them so that if there's one there, the road is paved for multiple tenant sites in the same building. Is that correct?
So that, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think we may have broached this the last time, but I don't know. I've done a few since then. But essentially what you're saying is correct. It's actually more than just a policy. It's a federal law that was enacted in 2012. And it was part of this called the Middle Class Job Creation Act. And this was something that was tacked on to the end of it. And it was signed into law. And what it says basically is, once you approve a facility for a communications facility like this, basically, as long as you're not extending it or substantially increasing it, it's supposed to be approved, but it still has to come before the local board. But there are time frames. That's the reality. Is that yes, others can come because it's considered a base station at that point.
So I just want to comment that I don't think that it's enough to just say there are no safety issues. You hear that all the time. I think that that our citizens here are going to really want to hear some specifics about, the health issues, even though I don't think that the studies have been done on 5G. I think that's a very, very serious question that the community is going to have. And just hearing that there are no health issues is not going to probably be the best approach. It is a little worrisome that that once if you're approved, then that means other providers also need to be approved. And Betsy, I didn't get a chance to read all of the information that you sent because I only read it today, and I apologize for not reading it the first time you sent it. But a few things did stick out, and I don't know really understand this, but one of the things that caught my eye was a couple of things: the independent review. The actual sentences, municipalities need to obtain information from telecommunications facility applicants that can be understood by us, is complete with relevant information provided, is accurate and verified by technical documentation and independent review. So, and then also is clear and not based on incorrect assumptions. Okay, so I like that. All of those, especially the third one, is accurate and verified by technical documentation. I think we need to kind of demand that. And independent review. I don't know what independent review actually means, but then in the next paragraph, it says to obtain this information, the municipality needs to establish a collaborative relationship with the service provider. The municipality should also secure independent professional assistance to address the specific community planning, legal, aesthetic, and technical issues related to wireless communication, telecommunications facility development. Which makes me wonder, should not we have some professional assistance that we hire, that Verizon pays for?
Scott, I know I'm turning to you, and you really are, we're wearing a few hats here. I've too read what Laura just shared with us, and we obviously as a board are not technically equipped to assess this, very much like we have with other applicants where we hire a professional to guide us through this. Would Verizon be willing to enter into an agreement with us where we have escrow, where we can hire somebody to do this work for us?
Yeah, we recognize that you folks are not going to necessarily be the experts in this field. There are very few people like that. So we routinely will establish an escrow as long as the consultant that you hire is an expert. And I will caution, I'm not going to say names, there are local folks that are not truly experts that hold them out as experts. As long as you hire a qualified person, we submit the escrow, and as long as the fees are reasonable. I've seen fees from some experts that are reviewing my application that go into $20,000. It shouldn't be a lot more for an expert to review one aspect of the application than it takes me to put together the whole thing. That being said, we recognize your need for that service. We don't have a problem with it. But I do want to just go back. This is not for 5G, just so we know. This is going to be 4G. It is not 5G. Not that it matters, but it's 4G. And then we're very well equipped to explain the federal law that says local municipalities can't even consider health impact and effects. I'm not trying to be, disagreeable here. The federal law for 25 years has been, that's a no-go area because these are safe. They are totally safe. So
I actually, board, for your information, I have also done a bit of a deep dive on this from the last time Verizon was before us, and Scott is actually, that this is factual. It's federal law. We cannot review the health impacts. It's just not within our purview.
And one thing we will do, though, as part of the application is we will give you a couple things, but one is going to be a report on what our signal emissions are, because when it comes down to this, these are radio signals. That's all. They're just radio signals at a specific frequency. It's not ionizing energy in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't change your DNA. It's a radio signal. But we will, under the FCC, we have a legal right to operate and emit certain signals at a certain level. We will give you that analysis that shows you that we are not only within the operating parameters of the FCC, we're going to be about 500 times less than the maximum that we have a legal right to emit. So these are really low powered devices that we use. Honestly, if they were higher power, we wouldn't probably need so many. But they're very low power. But we'll give you that technical information so that when you hire your consultant, they can review it and they can advise you instead of you taking my word.
Okay, that's
Okay, Scott, so when can we expect the application from you so that we can move this process
So
forward?
tell me how you want to do it. I can submit the application probably pretty shortly, but I won't have the visual information
Well,
because
Steve's gonna take care of the visual information. Steve, when do you think you can take a look at that? What's your time frame about?
Fairly flexible the next couple of weeks, honestly. So, yeah, I think, Scott, we can get in touch and find a time.
So do you? And then
Okay.
Scott, you could maybe submit your application so that we can start looking at it in July. Would
that's
that
my
make-
hope. I believe we should be ready by then. I know people are working on their various components, so it should be ready to go by then. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure that you and Steve have each other's contact information. Steve can get you the sightline information that we'd like you to include with your application.
That would
And
be
we'll,
great.
for your application in July or August, or whenever you get it to us, we'll be ready to receive.
Definitely July or August. Hopefully July, but possibly August, but I'm hoping July. And so Steve, once you let me know, we'll get to work on the visual and get the complete application into you.
Betsy, are we assuming that this will go to a public hearing at some point?
Oh, well, yes, it will,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
don't have an application yet, Larry.
Yeah, okay.
So
So
it's premature to have that.
I don't know if the applicant is willing to do this, but given the triggering effect of one approval, I think it would be useful for the community to see how not just this applicant would impact the sightlines in the neighborhood, but also the cumulative or collective effect of T-Mobile and AT&T and Sprint and whomever else might piggyback onto this approval. What that really does to the streetscape in the neighborhood.
My feeling is that that would be something that our consultant would take up, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a good point, but it's be nice for Steve to consider that if it's not too much of a burden, Stephen. It just kind of keep it, you're saying, Larry, for Stephen to keep an open eye for that?
Well, I'm saying that when we do a speculation, a rendering of what it would look like from the street or from wherever, I'd be interested, frankly, a view from Bliss Towers, but not just what it looks like to have the Verizon equipment on the roof of Providence Hall, but the equipment of 3 or 4 other companies who might also, because we approve this one, be by right allowed to install their equipment on the roof of the building. And, I think the visual impact of this is going to be the most significant thing for people, right? That, what is this going to do to our neighborhood? What's it going to feel like to walk down the street with this forest of equipment up there? And the degree to which we're able to show folks what can and can't be seen, I think will really help get this thing, understood and
That's a very good point, Larry.
Approved.
Very good point.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, if you have the chance, look at what we did for Bliss Towers. That'll give you at least an indication of what we're talking about. And I think when you see it, you'll see that it's not intrusive, but that's all in the eye of the beholder. In terms of other carriers, we can certainly see what we can do when your consultant gets on board. We have a difficulty predicting exactly where like a carrier would put their stuff because they have a different network than ours, but there's something we can probably work, we can probably give you an indication of what it could look like. So.
Yeah, I have a feeling if that's something that a consultant would take on, knowing that things like this have to be co-located. All right, Scott, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate your time and we look forward to receiving that.
You got it. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Bye, Scott.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
So board, the next thing on our agenda is quick committee reports from IDA and HCDPA. John, Cody, do you have anything to report from IDA right now?
Sorry. Before we go into the next agenda item, can we go back to this issue of the expert? Is this something that Barton and Loguadice, or whatever one says? could help us with?
I can reach out to Ryan and ask who he recommends. I'll reach out to Ryan and ask who he recommends, or if he has a recommendation. I'll do the research on this, unless someone else wants to. Does anyone want to volunteer to do the research on this?
You're the best person.
I can call Ryan, Betsy. I can call Ryan and get a telecom expert.
Thank you, Larry.
I need Ryan's contact info then.
That's easy for me to share.
Okay,
That's
great.
Yeah, okay. I'm writing down a to-do. All righty. Thanks, Larry.
Sorry for the interrupt.
John, do you have anything from the IDA that we need to know about?
I did, but I had a Windows update that nuked my system and completely lost the files somewhere on the machine that it's on. And we do have another meeting next Tuesday. So I'm hoping to be able to find it by then. And what I'll do is I'll put together the report and then send it to everybody on the website. And then, you know, Linda can maybe add it to the record at that point in time. I don't think there's much of anything that, you know, it's been 602 Union Street and things like that. And we're pretty well into that. I think the meeting on Tuesday is going to be to, I think it relates to like the pilot and those kinds of things. So, you know, there'll be a little bit more to report there. So I'll try to get that.
Do you feel that are we in sync, John, with the IDA in terms of the planning board and our review so that we're
believe so, yeah.
at pace? Okay.
Yeah. I think, you know, we're involved in a lot of the peripheral issues, and they're involved in a lot of the, you know, core issues of it, you know, with payments in lieu of taxes and that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's not apples and oranges necessarily, because some of the issues do crisscross, but I think for the most part, there really isn't a great deal to report that would be different than we already know, actually. So.
Could you remind me, what is the IDA?
Oh, it's the Industrial Development Authority for Hudson. It's one of the alphabet soup of little authorities that's developed like HCDPA, like HDC. They all have a slightly different role in order to be able to accept or apply for grants, to
what
suggest.
Do they do? They're trying to take a portion of Hudson and say this is for the industrial and this.
No, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a payment in lieu of taxes program and maybe funding and that kind of stuff. And that's what the IDA does. And if it was an industry, they'd probably do it for an industry. This is a private, or, you know, not a private, but it's a hotel organization. So it's a business that qualifies. Yeah.
And Teresa, just there's another one, the Hudson Development Corporation, and they're supposed to be getting business, spurring economic development through business. And I'm actually co-chair with Kamal in the Hudson Community Development and HCDP Planning Agency. And we work on housing, affordable housing in the city. We actually meet on the same day as the planning board meet. So we just met this morning, and we're talking about how to take the strategic housing plan that was done a few years ago and actually put legs on that and get some workforce and affordable housing projects up and running. I'm working with developers that specialize in that. And that's the kind of thing that agency does. And I don't have anything new to report. We're fact finding right now. But we don't have any plans on the table. HCDPA actually does own properties around Hudson, little tiny bits of land that we could land bank, we could sell to a developer for certain kinds of housing development. So we're all sort of trying to learn what it is we're supposed to be doing and what kind of projects we might enter into at the city, as an agency at the city, to get affordable housing.
I like that one.
So that's all I have to report on that. We're nowhere yet, but we're exploring right now. So unless anyone has any questions about that, I didn't have any new bills to approve this month, so we don't need, that's just a standing thing on our agenda. Continuing ed hours, if you all have any more hours that I need to know about, I think I tell you every month that I keep a spreadsheet. Maybe I should just share that with you. I'll send you all the spreadsheet, and you can, if I've missed continuing ed hours that you've completed, you can just add those, and then I send them on to Linda and Tracy.
Yes,
Tracy, we're having a little trouble, Linda, getting some certificates from the Department of State. We've done the training, but we don't have the actual certification.
That's okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Betsy?
Yes, I can.
Tracy just wants it to be part of the record, the minutes.
Oh, perfect.
I don't need the certificates.
So, all right, so board, I will send you my spreadsheet of what I know about the continuing hours that you've taken so far, and we'll enter that into the minutes next time, with a reminder that we all need to complete 4 hours before December 31st, a minimum of. In the matter of other,
Can I just, Betsy?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I've grown up on the board, on the planning board, and in all the years, this is the first time we've had reports that from the IDA and, you know, the other agencies, HDC, et cetera. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for including that in and including us in that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. John and I serve because we're serving on this board. And so I think it's important that we report to you what these boards are talking about, because we're representing the planning board when we're at these meetings.
I don't know about you, but I give reports to the IDA about what the planning board does. So, you know, it's good to have everybody kind of in the loop, for lack of a better way to say it.
It really is. There's so many little silos in Hudson, and all these alphabet soup agencies can get off doing things. And I think this is one board where we can sort of keep our eye on things a little bit, and so that we understand when big projects like 620 come before us, that the IDA is involved with that, and the Common Council is involved with that. And, you know, it's interesting to see how it all gets embroidered together. So thank you, Laura. We'll keep it on the agenda.
Betsy, quick question.
Yes.
Question. Does HCPDA have money to subsidize projects?
A tiny bit of money. We really don't have much. This is leftover from HUD when HUD did all the their work, primarily in the second ward. And so because we have a little bit of federal money left over, that's the money that we use. So for instance, we've approved I should have told you this, we approved a resolution today to spend up to $5,000 because we are trying to do a study about how, what kind of person we need to, what kind of consultant we're going to get to help us knit all of this together. And all of the agencies are participating by kicking in up to $5,000 for this, including a couple of private landowners who are involved with affordable housing. So it's just so that we can get the strategic action plan for housing actually working for the good of the people of Hudson, and actually make something happen, and not just have another study that collects dust on a shelf.
I would like to participate.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
Me too, Betty.
Okay, Teresa, thank you.
Yeah, that's.
Our meetings are open to the public just like this. So I'll make sure that you all know when it's the same day as the planning board. So you can just have a double header with me every month.
And the IDA is on the same day too, usually. Next week's going to be a little aberration, but
so
I could do it and have a triple header.
Every Tuesday of the month. And under other business, we have a resolution to approve our decorum resolution. I wanted to read it to you because I would like to read this into the record. Linda, you have this, I believe, but if you don't, I will send it to you, so it's going to be part of our minutes. This is our resolution establishing a decorum rule, and I'll read it to you all. Whereas the planning board is often faced with difficult issues of land use planning, property rights, and the legitimate interests of applicants, neighbors, and community members. And whereas the planning board recognizes that review of applications can result in strongly held opinions and occasional emotional reactions. And whereas on occasion, members of the planning board, as well as members of the public and applicants, have been subject to disruptive, abusive, and threatening behavior that goes beyond the vigorous expression of strongly held views. And whereas the planning board deems it advisable to adopt a rule of decorum stating the planning board's expectation for behavior at its meetings and establishing a means of barring disruptive persons and suspending the review of applications if necessary. And whereas the planning board expects by simply clearly stating its expectations of proper behavior that it will rarely have to invoke the penalty provisions of this rule. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the planning board hereby adopts the rule of decorum set forth below in its entirety. The City of Hudson Planning Board recognizes that the applications it considers involve fundamental issues of land use planning and property rights, and that these issues can result in strong feelings and emotional reactions from applicants, their agents, and members of the public. Nevertheless, the planning board expects all persons appearing before it and those attending its meetings to do so in an orderly manner and shall not engage in any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the planning board's meetings. Nor shall any person engage in any threatening manner or abusive language directed at any member of the planning board, any applicant or their agent, or any member of the public. If any person continues to engage in such behavior after being warned by the chairperson to cease such behavior, the chairperson may bar that person from further attendance before the planning board at that meeting. If an applicant or their agent engages in any such conduct and continues to do so after being warned by the chairperson, the planning board may, by a majority vote, act to cease consideration of that application at that meeting and reschedule the application for a future planning board meeting. Does anyone have any questions about that resolution? Or, yes, Teresa. Teresa, I can't, are you muted?
Yes.
There you are.
Okay, in the last paragraph or statement, you said we may come together and have a vote as to whether we're going to consider the application again.
If someone is disruptive and warned, and they continue to be disruptive, by majority vote, we can agree to cease considering the application at that meeting at which we're sitting, pending, and they'd have to come back to the next meeting with their application. So basically, it's a month cooling off period.
And bomb forever.
The timeout.
It's a timeout. That's
Timeout for a couple of months, years.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything they need to add? Anything they would like to take out? Does this resolution sound like it covers what we wanted it to cover?
It does.
My only comment was, and I don't have it in front of me, but it mentions abusive behavior towards individuals. And I'm wondering if we could just add something about abusive behavior towards the group in general. Because there may not be individuals singled out necessarily. Sometimes it's general abuse, which I've observed. And yeah, so I think that should be included.
Yeah, I agree. Makes it clear.
So how about, nor shall any person engage in any threatening manner or abusive language directed at the board as a whole or at any member of the planning board, any applicant or their agent, or any member of the public.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Linda, did you get that?
I just have to add at the board as a whole.
Board as a whole, yeah. Linda, could you do a roll call on this, please?
Well, can we just discuss it for a second, though?
Oh, yes, of course.
No one wants to be abused, and I hate being bullied personally, and I really hate even more seeing people get bullied. However, citizens have a right to speak out about things that concern them, and our goal is to take it from them, and I just want to make sure that the most the strictest penalty is simply that we ask them to stop engaging in the matter at hand for that month, but they can come back the next month. Is that that's the
Absolutely.
strictest?
I think that's what it said, right?
Yeah,
that's
I just want to clarify that because I'm okay with that. If to me that does not undo, or that wouldn't become for me a First Amendment issue, right? Like, if it's just, hey, cool down, come back next month, then I think we're being fair to folks who might get really upset and yet at the same time not subject ourselves to aggressive, hostile behavior.
Well, that's what it said.
Yeah.
Plus, we have to vote. We have to vote on it, so it's, you know what I mean. It's
right, and so it has to be a majority of us find that it's so
Yeah,
intolerable that okay. Yeah, I think that's a protection. Yeah, okay. Okay, now I can vote.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment on this before Linda calls the roll? All right, Ms. Fenoff, please.
Hey, Teresa,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Laura,
yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Betsy.
Yes. Okay, and number 5 on our agenda, continuing at opportunity, was an aberration. It was a holdover from a prior meeting. So you may strike that and we can call for an adjournment unless any.
So moved.
Oh, John Cody.
You mean it's not 11 o'clock?
Not 11 o'clock. We can
I
still have
second.
dinner.
Right.
And Teresa, you're the second. All in favor? I don't think we need a roll call for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much for a very productive meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Betsy.
Okay.
Thank you, Betsy. Good
All
night.
right. Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Naheem.
Bye-bye.